production of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide has been warming the planet since the late 1800s, with serious consequences for countries around the world, in particular small island states. The grave realities of a world made warmer by the burning of fossil fuels brought 197 countries together in a combined effort to stave off the impacts of climate change by keeping global temperature increases to 2 degrees Celsius and ideally 1.5 degrees. In the Caribbean, the challenges associated with a warming world are particularly acute. Small island developing states are uniquely vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, sea level has already risen almost half a meter since the 1800s and continues to rise in the Caribbean at about 3 millimeters a year. A primary concern among scientists is how new ocean levels will affect people living at sea level, especially when storm surges inundate coastal and low-lying areas. IPCC studies show that in the Caribbean, our proximity to the equator means we will suffer the impacts of sea level rise earlier and more severely than other areas. Financially, we lack the resources to adapt on our own. Just like other parts of the world coping with their own manifestations of climate change, in Trinidad and Tobago, we are also being confronted by these impacts. Farmers, for example, are generally more attuned to variations in weather and climate than the rest of us, as they depend on the elements to earn their living. They're already telling climate researchers soils are drier and crop yields lower due to increased air temperature. One local study notes that southern Trinidad, which was already drier than northern Trinidad, became 10% drier between 1900 and 2010. Despite the general trend of decreased rainfall in some areas, there's another pattern that's just as damaging. Extremely heavy, short showers have been more frequent too. They dump a lot of water, so quickly that watercourses can't handle the volume and fields and communities are flooded. Combined, these climate change challenges could diminish our access to safe, reliable supplies of local produce. It all adds up to a risk for a small nation's food security that we can't ignore. Meanwhile, climate change through sea level rise and stronger storm surge is already taking a toll on our beaches. Erosion has been recorded on the east and south coasts of both Trinidad and Tobago. In some cases, the change is significant. Additionally, fish landing sites have been ranked as most vulnerable to damage from rising seas and storm surges. The message planners want us to get is that we can't throw our hands up while climate change plays out. As a signatory to the Paris Agreement, we must meet our obligations under that treaty to reduce greenhouse gas. We must also prepare to adapt to the effects of climate change. Given the impacts currently being felt and those that are projected to happen in TNT, we will have to find ways of managing these risks and coping with the fallout. That means mainstreaming climate resilience into national development so that impacts and risks in all sectors are minimized and can be managed. This also includes building structures to keep the sea at bay and that are designed to withstand impacts over a very long period. Investment in infrastructure should be seen as 100-year investments. It means introducing new building codes to increase resiliency to the adverse impacts of climate change. Adaptation in the agriculture sector also means helping farmers access fresh water sources and plant drought-resistant crops. It also means changing our water use habits, learning to be more thoughtful of where it comes from and understanding the importance of using it carefully. Another sector that's vulnerable to climate change is the biodiversity found in our forests and coral reefs. Forests can be thinned by stronger storms with impacts on animal habitats. Even our water supply can be affected when rainfall runs off too quickly rather than flowing into catchments or aquifers. Adapting also means managing forests more attentively with a national system of protected areas and a baseline survey of how much they contribute to livelihoods. In the warmer, more acidic sea, coral cover is being lost, with inevitable consequences for fisheries and tourism. But scientists note that reducing nearshore water pollution would lower the stress on our reefs that would be exacerbated by climate change, thereby giving them a better chance to adapt. The other benefit of climate action, of course, is protecting ourselves from the most severe impacts of flooding, sea level rise and food insecurity. Together, we can manage the challenges of a warming planet by carefully planning how each vulnerable sector can adapt. As signatories to a global effort to combat climate change, Trinidad and Tobago is also focused on adaptation by assessing its vulnerability to climate risks and factoring those risks into national development planning with a firm acknowledgement that climate change is a national development issue. We must keep our eyes fixed on emerging climate risks as we plan to secure the health and prosperity of the next generations.